I just wanted to go on this little baby rant about Rachel Zegler. She's the young woman that was cast as Snow White. Not because she can't keep her mouth shut. I'm totally fine with with the celebrities telling me what their politics are, who they're voting for, etc., etc. We've become accustomed to that. But because she has this underlying anger and hatred in her that always has to take it like one step too far.
If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
Okay, let's be clear. This wasn't just a minor stumble for the Mouse House. This was a full-blown avalanche. Imagine the hushed panic in Disney boardrooms, the frantic late-night meetings. This wasn't just about a movie underperforming, it was about a potential crack in the very foundation of the Disney empire. We're talking about Snow White, for crying out loud, a cornerstone of their animated legacy, a symbol of pure, unadulterated Disney magic. And somehow, against all odds, this live-action reimagining morphed into a PR catastrophe of truly epic proportions. The question isn't just what went wrong, but how did something so seemingly foolproof detonate so spectacularly? How did a project brimming with nostalgic promise become a box office black hole and a symbol of corporate misjudgment? From the outset, the project seemed destined for fairy tale success. Disney, armed with its seemingly endless coffers and a proven formula for live-action remakes, had all the ingredients. They cast a young, vibrant actress in Rachel Zegler, fresh off the buzz of West Side Story, seemingly poised for superstardom. They promised stunning visuals, a modern sensibility, and a fresh take on a beloved classic. Initial reports highlighted the studio's unwavering optimism, the executive-level confidence that this Snow White would not just resonate with audiences, but would redefine the fairy tale for a new generation. Yet, even in those early days of manufactured excitement, a subtle unease began to creep in. Whispers, initially faint but growing louder, started to circulate within industry circles. Rumors of creative clashes on set hinted at a director and star pulling in different directions. Production delays, often vaguely explained, fueled speculation that all was not harmonious in the enchanted forest. And then there was Rachel Zegler herself, whose outspoken nature, initially seen as refreshing by some, began to generate a different kind of buzz, a nervous, apprehensive kind. Before a single frame of the film was released, a premonition of trouble was hanging in the air, a sense that this fairy tale might be headed for a decidedly un-Disney-like ending. But no one, even the most cynical industry veteran, could have foreseen the sheer scale of the impending disaster. Rachel Zegler, initially hailed as a casting triumph, quickly found herself in the eye of a hurricane of criticism. The initial applause for her casting, a young Latina actress taking on a traditionally fair-skinned role, soon gave way to a barrage of negative commentary focused on her performance, and crucially, her public pronouncements. Critics, while some offered faint praise for the film's visuals, were largely lukewarm, often highlighting a disconnect between Zegler's portrayal and the expected innocence and gentleness of Snow White. But it was the audience reaction, amplified by the unforgiving megaphone of social media, that truly turned the tide. Fans, particularly those with deep-seated affection for the original animated classic, felt betrayed. They pointed to what they perceived as a lack of warmth, a certain cynicism in Zegler's interpretation, a stark departure from the wide-eyed wonder they associated with Snow White. Online forums and comment sections erupted with accusations of Disney wokeness gone too far, of sacrificing beloved characters at the altar of modern agendas. Parents, who had eagerly anticipated sharing a nostalgic experience with their children, expressed disappointment, even anger, at what they saw as a defilement of a cherished childhood memory. Phrases like "ruined my childhood" and "Disney is dead" became commonplace online, painting a stark picture of fan alienation. And then, Zegler's own words began to fuel the flames. Interviews surfaced where she seemed to downplay the importance of the love story in Snow White, even appearing dismissive of the original film's romantic elements. These comments, interpreted by many as arrogant and disrespectful, ignited a firestorm of backlash, casting Zegler not just as a performer in a potentially flawed film, but as a symbol of everything that traditional Disney fans felt was going wrong with the studio. Then came the moment that cemented the narrative of a studio in crisis. Bob Iger's public confession. In an almost unprecedented move for a CEO of a major studio, Iger openly acknowledged that the Snow White story had been fundamentally altered, and that these alterations were, in part, a direct result of Rachel Zegler's input. He stated, in no uncertain terms, that the studio had listened to Zegler's desire to inject a fresh, socially conscious perspective into the fairy tale. This admission was nothing short of an earthquake in Hollywood. Executives rarely, if ever, publicly admit to ceding creative control to actors, especially on projects of this magnitude. Iger's candor, while perhaps intended to appear transparent and collaborative, backfired spectacularly. Instead of garnering praise for embracing modern perspectives, it confirmed the worst fears of disgruntled fans, that Disney had indeed prioritized the vision of a single actress over the enduring legacy of a classic story. It painted a picture of a studio bending to the will of a star, potentially sacrificing artistic integrity and audience expectations in the process. The admission transformed the controversy from a debate about artistic interpretation into a referendum on Disney's creative direction and its relationship with its fan base. It was a turning point, solidifying the narrative of a Snow White project spiraling out of control. Behind the scenes, the situation was reportedly even more fraught. Rumors of intense creative clashes between Zegler and the director, Mark Webb, painted a picture of a production riddled with friction. Sources whispered of Zegler's uncompromising style, her strong opinions on the script and character, and her willingness to challenge established norms. Disney, initially envisioning moderate, carefully balanced tweaks to update Snow White for a modern audience, allegedly found themselves grappling with demands for fundamental changes that went far beyond their comfort zone, and arguably beyond what the core audience was willing to accept. The push for socially conscious perspectives reportedly manifested in alterations to the storyline, character motivations, and even the overall tone of the film. The lighthearted charm, the whimsical innocence that defined the original Snow White, was perceived by many to be replaced by heavier themes, vague allusions to female empowerment and modern sensibilities that felt forced and out of place within the fairy tale framework. Early promotional materials, carefully crafted to generate excitement, instead triggered alarm bells. The trailers and posters seemed to emphasize these altered elements, showcasing a Snow White that felt drastically different from the beloved original. Online reactions were swift and brutal. Comment sections flooded with expressions of dismay, with fans lamenting the perceived loss of magic, the intrusion of modern agendas into a timeless story. The project, once envisioned as a nostalgic crowd-pleaser, was rapidly becoming a lightning rod for cultural anxieties and fan discontent. Disney's PR machinery, usually a well-oiled and effective operation, found itself sputtering and failing. Attempts to spin the narrative to emphasize the film's modern relevance and fresh perspective fell flat against the rising tide of negativity. Then came the ill-fated appearance on The View. Desperate to regain control of the narrative and humanize Rachel Zegler in the eyes of the public, Disney's PR team orchestrated a carefully planned interview on the daytime talk show. The script was meticulously crafted. Zegler would express respect for the original, explain the rationale behind the changes, and reassure fans that the adaptation was made with love and admiration. But live television, as they say, is a beast. And Rachel Zegler, perhaps feeling emboldened or simply unwilling to adhere to the carefully constructed talking points, veered dramatically off script. Ignoring explicit warnings from Disney handlers, she launched into a discussion of her personal political beliefs, touching upon sensitive and divisive topics that had absolutely nothing to do with Snow White. The atmosphere on set reportedly turned icy. Hosts attempted to steer the conversation back to the film, but Zegler, seemingly determined to speak her truth, resisted. Behind the cameras, chaos erupted. Disney representatives frantically tried to intervene, leading to a tense confrontation that unfolded just off camera. Producers, sensing disaster, abruptly cut the segment short, leaving the hosts visibly flustered and the audience bewildered. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Social media exploded with clips of the awkward exchange, memes mocking the meltdown, and scathing commentary on Zegler's perceived arrogance and Disney's PR ineptitude. The View debacle became a symbol of the studio's utter loss of control, a public spectacle that amplified the existing negativity and solidified the perception of a project in freefall. When the box office receipts finally trickled in, they confirmed the studio's worst nightmares. Snow White wasn't just a disappointment, it was a resounding, undeniable flop. Despite a massive marketing campaign and Disney's brand recognition, the film tanked, failing to recoup its substantial production budget and leaving a gaping hole in the studio's financial projections. Suddenly, the term box office poison began to be whispered in connection with Rachel Zegler's name. Entertainment blogs and industry analysts dissected the failure, pointing to the controversies, the negative press,